Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zone Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my co-hosts are Linda Wilson and Bernie Rose. Hello, gang. How are you? Hello, Linda.
Hi. Nice day. How you guys?
Hello
Bernie,
there.
how you doing?
In the words of Marty Allen, hello there.
Hello there. You're showing your age.
Well,
Okay.
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Tonight we're going to discuss one of the all-time greats in baseball history, and probably, if you don't count Sandy Koufax, because this is a prejudicial thing that I'm going to say, probably the greatest Dodger of all time. Edwin Donald Snider. They called him Duke. He was the Duke of Flatbush. Duke Snider. He wore number 4. He patrolled center field at Ebbets Field for many, many years. He was an 8-time All-Star. He played 16 of his 18 years with the Dodgers, either in Brooklyn or L.A. He was in 6 World Series, 2 of them championships, and he had 40 or more home runs in 5 consecutive seasons. In 1999, Duke Snider ranked 84th on the Sporting News list of the 100 greatest players of all time. Now, I don't know if the Sporting News has had a top 100 list since 1999. I'm sure they have. But in 1999, the Duke was number 84 on the greatest 100 players that ever played the game. He is one of 2 players, Gil Hodges being the other one, to have 1,000 runs batted in during the 1950s. And Snider had the most home runs, the most RBIs in a decade of the 1950s. That includes Mantle, Mays, Musial, all those guys. Snider had the most home runs and RBIs. Yep. In 36 World Series games, he had 11 home runs, drove in 26 runs, and he had a .286 average. And here's something that you guys are going to love. I never knew this, and I should have, because he's my hero all my life. Duke Snider hit the last home run ever in Ebbets Field, and he hit the first home run ever in Dodger Stadium.
That's right.
No kidding.
How do you like that?
Yeah.
I do like that.
One more
cool.
stat. One more stat for all our stat heads out there, and then I'll yield the floor for a while. We all know what OPS is now. Maybe 5 years ago, no one knew what OPS meant, but now we all know what OPS is.
Right.
On base percentage plus slugging. Okay, and an average one is 700. A good one is 750. Duke Snider's lifetime OPS, 920.
Nice.
Isn't that something? And we both, all 3 of us, think that Vin Scully knows more baseball or has forgotten more baseball than we will ever know. We think he is the number 1 guy. Vin Scully is quoted on Duke Snider as saying, quote, "When Duke was out of Ebbets Field on the road and he had a chance to run and move defensively in center field, he had the grace and abilities of both DiMaggio and Mays," end quote.
Wow.
Okay? How do you like that?
Very nice.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. Well, ladies before gentlemen, let's let Linda talk a little bit about Duke Snider.
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay. My first memory of him, because he was retired when I was so young, was in 1969. When 1969
you always have to get that in there, don't you, Linda?
I know, because I have to explain why I don't remember him playing. Okay.
I'm kidding.
In 1969, the expansion Padres, he was a broadcaster for them in their first year. Actually, their first 3 years before he went to Montreal. So I knew him first from his voice, and Duke lived here in San Diego County. He lived in a little country town growing avocados, as everybody knows, and so he had lived here for I don't know, maybe 50, 60 years when he died. And so those are my first memories. But then, of course, always hearing the stories by then about Duke. And when I was, I don't know, maybe 16 years old, I read the book, The Boys of Summer. And, I just fell in love with that book. And my dad was a big Duke Snider fan. He said, he's always around. He's always at all these events around town, which is true. He made a lot of appearances. He owned a bowling alley for a while, back in the early mid-60s, I think. And anyway, he was just very, very visible in his town out there in the country of Flatbush, California, and he and his family were very, just very well known for years, for not just because of his celebrity status, but just because their family was so active and involved in the community. And well, let's see, when he died, they had a public memorial, and I went to that. It was very nice. Place was jam packed, of course, and they had a baseball tournament right afterwards. That the high school in that town. Apparently, when Duke died, one of the requests was that, in lieu of flowers or other donations, that people make contributions to the high school baseball team. So that's easy to do if you love baseball. So I did it. But anyway, they had a game right after the service where they served Dodger dogs right there at the Duke Snider baseball field, and everybody on both teams wore number 4 in that game.
Wow!
So it was really touching. And then the week after that, no, it wasn't the week after that because that was in February that he died, but several months after that, during the regular season of baseball, the Dodgers had a special Duke Snider giveaway. I think it was, they gave away a bobblehead, Duke bobblehead, and his whole family was there for that. And that was just really special because his wife was just beaming. It was the first thing she had gone to at Dodger Stadium since he died, and he was just, absolutely beaming. She thought it was a wonderful night, and I really got emotional that night. It was really special. And the Dodgers won the game, which was important too. so anyway, my memories of him obviously are after him being a player, but it's not just him as a broadcaster, but him as making appearances around town. He used to. I guess the last time I actually saw him speak at something was in 2005, they had the San Diego Hall of Champions had a forum with Jerry Coleman, Duke Snider, and a couple of other people who I'm not remembering now, but they all shared stories about baseball in New York in the 50s, and then they shared stories about baseball in California in the 60s. So they all had their stories, and that's who else came into this forum later after Duke and Jerry and somebody else. The fourth person that showed up later was BAZEBALL, and this was just, I don't know, a few years before he died. Oh. But he had some really good stories too. So it was a good event, and like I said, Duke was always around. You knew he was always somewhere around the area. Sometimes he would go to Dodger Stadium for special events or just for games, and so he's just always been a presence there. So those are my stories, my memories.
Good ones.
That's great. Yeah.
Good ones.
Absolutely.
Bernie
Well,
Rose?
I ate in his restaurant in Vero Beach a couple of times.
Oh, really?
He had a restaurant down there while he had spring training there for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And when I got down to Florida, it was, a 2-hour drive. I used to go up there all the time in March. So, but anyway, other than that, you touched on a couple of points, Peter, that sort of answered my wondering about his Hall of Fame statistics, because not every guy that hit only 407 home runs and only had 2,116 hits are in the Hall of Fame. I'm sure there's plenty of guys who are not. But when you lead a decade in home runs and you are leading the team to the World Series many, many times in that decade, then that says a lot for that, no doubt.
Yeah.
Because growing up in New York, I mean, the Dodgers left when I was 7, and the Giants too, for that matter. But still, in the early 60s, you know, when I'm like 9, 10, 11, whatever, and 12 when the Dodgers swept the Yankees in 63. But all those early 60s years, we all, you know, were hanging. You can ask Ralph. We're hanging around in 90th Street Park. Who's the best center fielder? You know, was it Mays, Mantle, or Snider? But Snider was kind of becoming the forgotten one out of that trio. He was a little older, and Mays and Mantle were still going wild, you know, and of course Mick was still there in New York and still going crazy, hitting like a maniac, like all three of them did. But Duke always seemed to get, you know, coming in third place there. And I guess if you had to do a survey, he still would come in third place. But but because the other guys were just so great.
Yes, they were.
But he was too, and I don't want to diminish that. And,
well, for the four full seasons that all three of them played together in New York, from 1954, 55, 56, and 57, Mays, Mantle, and Snider all played full seasons in New York. Snider led the two others in both home runs and runs batted in.
There you go.
More home runs and more RBIs than Mantle and Mays from 54, 55, 56, and 57. So he was no slouch.
No.
But like you said, he was a little bit older than the other two, and he did hurt his knee. I'm not saying Mantle didn't have issues, physical issues, but Snider did hurt his knee, and you know, he got lost in the shuffle. I mean, to be rated third in your own city doesn't sound like much, but that's third in the world. Also.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
No one else came close to these guys. These guys were the elite. They were the elite. Believe me, I saw Snider play in his prime, and he was just terrific. He was just unbelievably terrific. I mean, I used to go to a ball game with my dad. Snider would hit a home run. I'd go to. I wouldn't go for 2 months. My dad would get tickets. We'd go back. Snider hit a home run. It was like he knew I was coming. You know. And then we went to a game. We went to a game in Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, and Don Newcomb against Brooks Lawrence, and it was 2-1. The Reds were ahead. Bottom of the ninth inning. Gilliam got on base, or Reese got on base, one of the two, and Snider hit one over the light towers in right center field to win the game 3-2. The bottom of the ninth, walk-off home run. We didn't call it walk-off back then. He just a game-winning home run. But I mean, he just rose to the occasion constantly in the World Series. Even if the Dodgers lost, Snider had a homer in that game. Even if the Dodgers lost by 3-2, Snider had 2 home runs in that game to account for both Brooklyn runs. I mean, he was just a force.
He was.
I'm not
and
trying
it's the
to
5
say,
years difference in our age that allowed you to see all that stuff that I just missed out on. Because, or 4 years with difference, whatever it is. But because, like I mentioned before, I was only at Ebbets Field once, and I don't even remember it. I was so young, but I know my father took me there. But before we get into that MVP balloting controversy again, here's an interesting, just an interesting tidbit of information. In 1962, and I'm sure you both probably familiar with this.
Okay.
They ended up tied with the Giants.
Yeah.
And Snider and Leo DeRocha, who was the third base coach, apparently were pleading with Walter Alston to bring in Don Drysdale, in the ninth inning. This
on
was
the bench. They begged them.
The third game of the deciding playoff game to go to the World Series. And they were ahead 4-2. And they had Drysdale ready, and Austin didn't do it. Snider and DeRocher were begging him. He brought in Stan Williams because Roebuck was tiring out, and they ended up losing 6-4.
And Snider got traded after that.
Yeah.
Snider got traded after that, and DeRocher was jettisoned off of the third base coaching lines. Very interesting.
And you have to wonder, because the way the Dodgers swept the Yankees the following year, could the Dodgers have put together 2 in a row? They've never won 2 in a row. And, well, they can't even get to the World Series anymore, but that used to be more of a normal thing.
Not their year.
28 years, I don't know how much more I can take. I feel like a Cubs fan. But, at least we have the history, that the Cubs fans don't. But
all right,
anyway.
I'm gonna let my esteemed partner here, Bernie Rose, fill us in on a little background and start the conversation off regarding the National League Most Valuable Player Award in 1955. Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
Well, thank you. This was where the Duke finished second to Campy, Roy Campanella, but he trailed by just 5 points. Each man got 8 first-place votes, and the story, widely believed story, is that a columnist, Tracy Ringlesby, holds that a hospitalized writer from Philadelphia had turned in a ballot with Campanella as his first and 5th place vote. And it was assumed that the writer had meant to write Snider's name into one of those slots. Unable to get clarification, the BBWAA considered disallowing the ballot but decided to accept it, counting the first place vote for Campy and the 5th place vote as though it were blank. And if it had been disallowed, Snider would have won the MVP. Or had he gotten the now blank 5th place vote, the final vote, he still would have come out 1 point ahead. And then there was another way it would have worked out where they would have been tied. But as it is, the way they left it, he ended up short and never won an MVP, if I'm not mistaken. So
right. You're not mistaken.
And the only thing that Campy beat him out on was batting average, 318 to 309. The slugging, the on-base percentage, the RBIs, home runs, doubles, hits, and runs were all in Snider's favor, and some by a wide margin. And I know Campy was a catcher and played 25 less games. However, 126 runs to 81, slugging 628 to 583. That's fairly close. On base 418 to 395, fairly close, but RBIs 136 to 107. And of course he had 10 more home runs. So Campy had so many great years as well. But Campy won 3 MVPs, if my memory serves me correct.
Yes, he did.
And the Duke never got one, so it's kind of a shame. And I'm sure
yeah, it is a shame. It is a shame.
You have something to add, I'm sure.
Duke Snider fan. Thank God they're both in the Hall of Fame, though, and that's where Gil Hodges belongs. And we know all about that voting travesty too with Ted Williams. We won't get into that tonight if you don't want to, but
right.
Duke
My
Snider.
friend Lou was talking about that this afternoon, and he'll join us next week.
That's great. Can't wait to hear him. You tell him we're looking forward to it. And this is the fellow that that lived across the street from Ebbets Field and used to walk to the games. I just want our audience to know that, who we're talking about, not to be so esoteric. Snider was, there are believers, there are atheists, and there's agnostics when it comes to clutch hitters. And I was always an agnostic. I can't see any proof of clutch hitting or whatever, and I don't want to bring Bill James into the conversation, although I could to back my story up. But I'll tell you this, when I was a kid and I watched the Dodger games and the games that weren't on TV, I listened to on the radio. And when I went to the games and stuff like that, Snider always seemed to me to come up with a big hit. Whether it was a single, double, triple, home run, whatever it was, Snider would do it. He struck out a lot. Yes, he did. And he grounded into his share of double plays. But by and large, when the game was on the line and we needed him, well, we really needed him, the Duke would come through. And he came through many, many, many times when I watched. To my glee, I was absolutely beside myself. Happiness. Duke Snider, the first game I ever went to in my entire life, my father brought me. I didn't even want to go. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. We're going to Ebbets Field. We're going to see the Brooklyn Dodgers. It was like 1953, and I was like 6 or something like that. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. We go to the game. I saw the field. I couldn't believe it. First inning, they're playing the Braves, and I think it was their first year, Milwaukee Braves. Lou Burdette was pitching. Snider comes up in the first inning. Boom, he hits one into Bedford Avenue. Now, most 6-year-olds, you're in a ball game like that, and a guy hits a ball that high and that far, you can't even follow it. You don't even know. You know, you're like eating your candy or your ice cream, and your father goes, "Hey, he just hit a home run," and everybody starts screaming, and you jump up and you start screaming too because everybody else is doing it. I actually watched the ball. I actually saw the ball off of the bat and followed it. Could not believe it went that high and that far, and it went over the wall by jeez, it seemed like
what a great memory.
Yeah, and you know something? I was hooked. Right then and there, I was hooked. Duke Snider. That was it. I wore number 4. Yeah. Every team I played for, I wore number 4. That was it. I used to pose like him in pictures with the little smirk and the one shoulder higher than the other shoulder. You see me and people go, "What, did you have a stiff neck or something? What was wrong with you in that picture?" No, I was doing my Duke Snider. That was my Duke Snider pose. And it was just unbelievable. The guy was just tremendous. I met him 4 times. He was a total gentleman, extremely humble, very, very good-looking man, and knowledgeable and nice. And it's a damn shame that he got caught up. You know, after he retired and all was said and done, he started going to those card shows. Yeah. And he would get like $15,000 for the weekend. And he would have to sign yearbooks and bats and balls and stuff like that, and he would get paid in cash, and he did not put it on his income tax, and he got snagged by the IRS. He and Willie McCovey, same time, right? Same. They both went to court and pled no contest or whatever. You know, I'm sorry, I did do that, and you know, what can I tell you? I'm not going to try to lie my way out of it. Blah blah blah. He had to pay fines.
Sure.
And he learned his lesson and everything. And that was a black mark on his character. But other than that, Duke was something else. He used to just like, you know, there'd be like a lull in the conversation, and he would say something crazy like, I drank highballs and hit low balls or something like that. You know what I mean? He would just come out with these crazy things. And I used to look at him and just laugh and everything. He's just a really, really great guy to talk to and stuff. And if he hadn't lived 2,800 miles away from me, I think I could have gotten like a little bit of a thing going on where maybe I could meet up with him for lunch every now and then. That would have been terrific for me. But he really was. He really was something. He really was.
You should have been living in my neighborhood then.
Yeah, really, right. He was right below you or above you?
He was about 30 miles north.
There you go, north. All right.
Yeah.
There you go. No, he was someone that everybody loved. There's no question about it. even when he was announcing, for the Expos and I guess a little bit with the Padres, but any chance that whenever he was on a game and they'd cut to him or they'd have him come in and call a game, if I could hear it on TV, I enjoyed it just because it was the Duke, and and he was a Dodger, for me, it's always been about the Dodgers. There was a period of time right after they left, before the Mets were in existence, and the Yankees were the only game in town, that I used to go to a lot of games with my father.
I used to go to doubleheaders at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, and Mantle, became like my favorite player because he's always hitting home runs, and I'm a kid. Although, Sandy Koufax was really my favorite player. And I certainly was ecstatic when he struck out 15 Yankees in the first game of the 63 World Series. But I'm getting off point. But the Duke and all those guys, they held something special for me, even though once they moved away and they were out there, you can only see a game here and there. But I couldn't wait to see it. And he was still the Duke. And from everything that I've seen, he was the guy that everybody loved. He was.
When the Mets were playing in the Polo Grounds in '62, on May the 30th, the Dodgers came in for a Memorial Day doubleheader, and I was there, of course. And it was just absolutely magical. The Polo Grounds held 55,000 seats. I had 55,000 seats. You could look up the attendance for that doubleheader. There was more people than seats. There were 55 and change. Yeah, it was packed, jammed. And I had pretty good seats, believe it or not. But then I was like pretty well grown. I mean, by that time I was like 16 and a half years old. You know what I mean?
Right.
I could take the train myself. I could take the bus myself. I could go in there with my buddy, just the two of us, and we could wangle our way for some beers. Get somebody to buy us 35-cent beers back then and stuff. And it was quite a different thing. When you're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, it's one thing.
It's different.
You're holding on to your dad's hand and everything, and everybody's 6 feet tall. You're like 3 feet tall. When you're 16 and a half and you're already 6'1", like I was, it was like an altogether different experience. And when I saw them come out of that dugout, because we got in as soon as they opened the gates, which was maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. You saw Johnny Padres come out of that dugout, and you saw Don Drysdale come out of that dugout, and Johnny Roseboro and Duke Snider and Gil Hodges. And those guys come out of that dugout, the hairs on the back of your neck stood up. You couldn't believe you were actually there, and you could see them, and they were like glancing around, looking up into the stands and stuff like that. It was unbelievable. Here's a little tidbit that I stumbled across that I thought you guys would like. In high school, Snider was the high scorer. This will not surprise you. He was a high scorer on his basketball team. Guess who played with him on the basketball team?
Oh, that I couldn't tell you.
Pete Rozelle.
That's right. I forgot.
Oh, really?
Pete Rozelle.
NFL
commissioner for a million years.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It sounds a little familiar, but it's another little tidbit of information.
Little tidbit of information.
Oh yeah.
One thing about when you were talking about how beloved he was that he was the last remaining player from the storied lineup in Brooklyn. He was the last surviving one until he died, and that was it.
Yeah, not counting the pitchers. Yeah.
Right.
He carried on that legacy, and that was all that a lot of people had left to hold on to because they remembered that great lineup. And
the last time I met him at a card show, he spoke about that, not to me, but to someone I was with. He was looking at the other person. I was watching him and listening, standing right there. He said, it's starting to it's starting to get close to me now. He says first the catcher went and the first baseman went and the second baseman went and the shortstop went and the right fielder went, and it's closing in on me now. He actually said those words. And he died in 2011. I think I heard him say that in 2007, like 4 years before he died. But he was cognizant of the fact that he was one of the final guys. You know, he had no fake, trying to whistle past the graveyard. He knew the deal. He knew everybody was growing longer and longer in the tooth, and that was, the inevitable was coming. And he was a man of faith, and he just, he accepted that. He accepted it. He also told me, he did tell me, I asked him how much he made, and he said the most I ever made as a player was $46,000, not counting the World Series share. $46,000. And did you know? I never knew this. In 1947, the Dodgers voted him a quarter of a share of their World Series check. How do you like that? He only
played. He wasn't up for very long in 47.
No, he wasn't at all. He had no home runs. He had 241. But they voted him a quarter of a share. I thought that was
pretty
very
cool,
magnanimous. Yeah.
Well, maybe they knew what was coming.
Maybe they did. Branch
they liked him like everybody else, right?
Yeah. Branch Rickey said he was going to be great. Branch Rickey knew. He said this kid's got steel springs in his legs and the best swing I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah. Branch Rickey.
The last living Brooklyn Dodger who was actually on the field for the final out of the 55 World Series.
Yeah, that's the Duke.
And apparently, his number 4 is retired by the Dodgers.
Of course.
Sure, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at the jersey retirement in 1980 when that happened.
Nice. And it should be. Absolutely should be.
Yeah, the Dodgers retire all the Hall of Famers.
Right.
Plus Jim Gillian, but all the Hall of Famers.
Right.
Were all retired. But there was a time like Snider left the Dodgers in at the end of 1962, very beginning April of '63. He got traded. His roommate was Don Drysdale. Don Drysdale says that he actually broke down and cried when he heard that Snider had been traded. But when Snider was traded, the thing that killed me, being the gigantic Duke Snider fan that I was, in '63. All the way to 1980, any Tom, Dick, and Harry could have been number 4 for the Dodgers.
That's right.
I mean, these jerks were running around with number 4 in their back, and I'm going, that's sacrilege. That's wrong. That is just wrong. You can't do that. These guys, they're up for a cup of coffee. They're number 4. Come on.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
Give me a break. It still kills me with number 14 to this day. It still kills me. Number 6 and number 14 kill me.
Oh.
Even 36 in a way. Even 36 for Newcomb in a way. It kills me.
Right.
And 41 for Labine. I mean, I just have my favorites. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sure.
I know you can't retire every single number in the book, but I mean, it just rubs me the wrong way. And it did for those years. What was it? 17 years from 63 to 80.
Yeah.
Is my math lacking or no? 17 years, a Dodger wore number 4. And whoever the heck it was, I used to cringe when I would see it.
Right.
I would just cringe. I couldn't believe it. By the way, there's only 2 players in the major leagues today that are pitchers with single-digit numbers, and Urias is one of them, number 7.
That's right. I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of them. The other guy is a pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. He's number 6 or 5 or something like that. I think it's 6. I don't know. Huh. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in at the end of the show. Let me thank both of you for your 100% cooperation, and I appreciate it. I think we did a pretty good job on the Duke. Is there anything else you want to add before we call it a night?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
I want to say that one of the most important statements that he ever made to me was how he hated Halloween because it was the same color as the Giants.
Wait a minute. Say this again. I didn't catch what you said.
I always hated Halloween because it's the same color as the Giants.
Oh.
Yeah, black and orange.
Funny.
That's funny.
That is funny.
I first heard that.
Right. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I first heard that when I was.
Why didn't he refuse?
I know.
Jackie Robinson to go to the Giants for that last year of his career.
Well, you know what?
Refused.
You know what? The way I read it, he asked the Mets to trade him to a pennant contender.
Look, he did. Yes, he did.
And they got in touch with the Dodgers, and while the Dodgers were dicking around, excuse my French, they were trying to work their roster or whatever. The Giants called and said, "We'll give you an extra $15,000 if you come and be our fourth outfielder and pitch in or whatever." And he went to San Francisco, but he wanted to get back to the Dodgers in '63.
Of course, but that's a lot of money back then. I guess you have to go for it.
Sure you do. No doubt about it.
I would imagine you do. But besides, the Cardinals won a pennant that year anyway.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So it wouldn't have mattered.
Nope.
Unless maybe he would have helped the Dodgers. I don't know. But
you never know. You never know. But he was pretty well past his prime back then. I mean, he had a very, very bad knee.
Yeah.
When the Dodgers moved in the winter of '57-'8, Snider had an operation on his knee. And when he went to spring training, he got into a minor automobile accident and re-injured the knee. So his knee was really shot in '58.
Yeah.
And then when he walked out onto the field at the Coliseum and he saw what used to be 344 feet was now 440 feet, right center field, it was all over for him.
Yeah.
It was over.
Right. Well, if I could add one more little tidbit.
Sure.
Because everybody knows, I think, the story. I think when Mantle won the Triple Crown in '56, and the next year he had a great year, but the numbers weren't quite as good, because when he won the Triple Crown, it was ridiculous. And so they docked him $10,000 the next year, because he wasn't as good. Well, when the Dodgers blew that 13-game lead in '51 to the Giants, apparently there was a sports page blame that attributed to a little bit against the Duke. And apparently he went to O'Malley and told him, "I couldn't take the pressure, and I'd just as soon be traded." But of course that never happened.
Nope, never happened. I read the same thing. He hit 277, which sounds pretty good nowadays. For the Duke, that was nothing. And he thought, I believe he drove in under 100 runs. Didn't he drive in like 92 or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it sounds about right.
Yeah. For him, it was a subpar year. And he did approach the front office and say, maybe you should trade me because I don't think I can take this kind of pressure. And yet he comes back in '52, does very well, leads into the World Series, hits 4 home runs in the World Series, and the rest is history. I mean, the guy was a Hall of Famer all the way. Hall of Famer all the way.
At 53 to 56, he averaged 42 home runs and 124 RBIs and 123 runs and a 320 batting average.
That's right. So, he was a superstar. He was a superstar.
Yeah.
People don't, people remember him. Oh yeah, I remember him. He played for the Mets. Yeah. He was good. No. He was a superstar.
Exactly.
He was a superstar back in the day.
And I'm glad that we remember him that way.
And everyone should. And if they don't, they should educate themselves. And Pee-wee Reese, who we all hold in awe for his for a lot of stuff, but especially for his baseball acumen, said that the greatest catch he ever saw an outfielder make, this is Reese talking, the greatest catch I ever saw an outfielder make, Snider, 1954, at Connie Mack Stadium off of Pudd'nhead Jones in Philadelphia. He said he ran to the wall, he jumped toward the wall and caught his spike into the wooden wall and catapulted himself up and made the catch one-handed. He said,
wow.
Reese said it was the greatest catch he ever saw. And Reese played for a couple of years, right? But he saw some.
I believe he did.
He said that was the greatest one. So,
well, no doubt. Oh, yeah, he was a great fielder, too. You have to also remember that. He had a great fielding percentage for his career.
Yep.
And, yeah, he was an all-around great player.
Yeah, when they did switch him to right field and left field toward the end of his career, it was only because of his knee. It was not because he couldn't field anymore.
Right.
His knee was shot. He was playing on one leg. So, yeah.
Right.
That was the deal.
And by the way, in '55, we were talking about that whole MVP controversy. He did win the Sporting News National League Player of the Year award.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So, you know, there was some recognition.
There was a lot of recognition. The Duke was the Duke.
Yeah. I meant just for that year, but of course, without a doubt.
I know. The Duke was the Duke.
Yeah.
Okay, gang. We're going to sign off.
Great show.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. We'll talk to your friend. You bring your friend on the show as our guest.
Absolutely.
Bring your
I will
friend,
do that.
On,
give him the
we'll
information.
Talk all about the Brooklyn neighborhoods and stuff like that. Get him ready during the week. Tell him, get some stories going, you know. What church, what parish did you belong to? What school did you go to? How far away from Ebbets Field was it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll have a good time talking to him.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.